Bendall. Everyone really got like tipped off about this when you did that episode with Joe, when you and Graham were on Joe, right? And then what you can explain it better than I can. What happened with that?
Yeah, well, the subject of, we were talking about ancient civilizations and did they have potentially an energy source that they were utilizing? And that's always been a fair question, and one that's been in my mind for many years. And I had mentioned a few things to Graham that I had, had some conversations with a scientist that had been working on developing an energy system based on plasma energy, which is the fourth state of matter. And at the time, I'm thinking, what I've heard and seen so far sounds promising, but I'm not qualified to have an opinion definitively on whether or not it's valid and viable. So I was very tentative at the time, and I knew at the time that there was going to be some testing in the pipeline that was going to determine whether or not this technology had merit. So I kind of was tentative. I was not too open about it, but excuse me, but I did disclose some information, maybe more than I should have at the time, in terms of the specifics, where his lab was and all of this. So as a result of that, it kind of led to one thing, kind of led to another, and he actually came to America to meet up. And
Who?
Malcolm.
Okay.
Malcolm. So we met, and we spent a considerable amount of time where he was tutoring me in the science and the technology. And the reason I had originally connected with him was because, in this work I had done in sacred geometry, he had seen some of that had been posted by my friend Brad Young from recordings of lectures I had given 15 or 20 years ago. And he'd seen some of that and saw that the geometry I was talking about had direct relevance to the science and the technology of plasmas. So because of that, he reached out to me, and we're going back about 8 years now. So we had regular conversations over a couple, 2-3 times a year, where he was giving me updates. And then, at the end of that is kind of, so that was sort of what led up to the remarks on Joe Rogan's. Now, in the interim, I had had an opportunity to talk to an Australian author by the name of Roland Perry, who is one of Australia's leading authors and investigative reporters. So Malcolm said I should read a book he had written. That was a fiction book, but a lot of it was actually drawn from Roland's investigations of Malcolm. So, and it turned out that Roland Perry and Malcolm were friends, because Roland had spent 4 years investigating Malcolm and his claims and looking at some of this stuff that had come up in the 90s and early 2000s, where he was in basically, well, because his background was geochemistry, and he was an oil prospector by profession who was exploring alternative energies, like going back to, stuff like the kind of stuff that you would trace back to people like Nikola Tesla and Victor Schauberger and others. There's a whole succession of these inventors throughout the 20th century and even into the 21st century. One of the most recent was Ken Shoulders, who was doing a lot of research into plasma energy and how plasma energy might be used as an energy source. So I was starting to dive more into the Tesla stuff and Victor Schauberger and some of these other, Stanley Meyer and some of these others that had been doing this kind of work. And it seemed like, yes, the more I learned, the more it seemed like, yeah, these guys really were onto something, right? So that just made me have more confidence that Malcolm was, if he's in that succession, in that line of research, and he's building upon what they've done, that gave me a sense that that maybe it's not as incredible as it may at first seem. Okay, so Roland Perry called me from Australia, and I had about a hour-long conversation with him. He sent me a copy of a signed book. And in this conversation, he basically said, yes, I spent 4 years investigating Malcolm, and essentially what happened was, he'd discovered an oil deposit, and one of the big oil companies, he had the licensing to drill, and one of the big oil companies that had overstated their reserves were getting in a lot of trouble because of that, and they saw that he would be an easy mark, and they were coveting that particular oil deposit. And so what they did was they began a whole campaign of bribery, where they were bribing journalists and politicians, primarily in Tasmania, which is where the oil deposit was discovered. And as a result of that, there was a whole smear campaign launched against him to discredit him, with the objective in mind of painting him as a nut job and scaring away investors, right? Because he was trying to raise money to do the drilling. And he had several investors on board. Well, this whole thing turned into this big kind of a scandal, politics, conspiracy theories, all of this. And finally, what happened was this oil company got caught. They got exposed, and the board of directors resigned.
Do we know what oil company it was?
Yes, we do.
Can we say it?
I would prefer not to.
Okay.
But I could. I just don't feel like drawing any extra attention. But if people out there want to do some digging, they'll find out what it is, which company it was. A very well-known oil company. And the entire board of directors resigned in 2003. But Malcolm was so basically discouraged and disappointed and disgusted over the whole thing and dealing with the politics, that he decided that rather than going forward and try to push forward on the drilling, he was just going to go back to what he had been doing in his free time for nearly 40 years, which was exploring alternative energies. Literally since he was like in high school is when he started it. So he spent 7 years isolated, writing up his notes and building some prototypes. And then these prototypes were tested, and the principles turned out to be valid. The prototypes did what they were predicted to do. And since then, since he came to America and we met, one of the things we did, and I have it right here, we put together a 243 slideshow that goes into all of the principles, which I'm still working on comprehending, because there's a fair amount to it. It's just like one of the things I kind of compare it to is maybe if we go back 120 years in the advent of alternating current electricity. Some of the basic applications can be relatively simple, and you don't need to necessarily know all of the physics behind it, right, to be able to use it. You can, for example, rebuild the engine of a car without necessarily knowing all of the physics of an internal combustion engine, right? So, where it was at was, after the Rogan appearance, Joe asked me to come back. Well, so in the interim, that's what I said, Malcolm came over here, and he was here, and we had set a date for me to be on the show, and I guess the day before, whatever, we drove from Georgia out to Austin, Texas. Myself, Brad Young, George Howard, who has been one of the key researchers in the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, and he runs the Cosmic Tusk website, and he was the one who organized the Cosmic Summit.
Oh, wow.
That was same. So George went with us. Malcolm came with because he was here, and I obviously was not going to just leave him sitting in the hotel room, so I invited him to come with. I knew he wanted to come with. And then Stephen Tuggle, who's kind of my assistant, been helping me out with stuff. So I think there was, 5 of us guys. We drove out there, went to Austin, and then I go to be on Rogan's show the next day. And I called him up and I said, Joe, it just so happened, you want to talk about this energy? Well, it just so happens that the inventor is here with me. I could bring him on, and he could probably explain and elucidate some of these stuff better than I could, because I'm still kind of I'm very much a novice. at this stage of my understanding. So he said, sure, bring them on.
Warning, you could soon lose your job because of what's happening inside this building you see behind me. Goldman Sachs economists are already...
Okay, so fast forward an hour or two, we get there, we go into the studio, and Jamie, Joe's producer, has looked up and found some of this stuff, part of the smear campaign, and had plunked that down on Joe's desk. So basically what happened was the substance of the interview went from talking about the science and the technology of plasmoid energy and its utilization into all of the conspiracy theories and politics and scandal and all of that. And as it proceeded, I'm constantly trying to steer the conversation back to the science, but Joe was kind of in attack mode.
From the start, he started questioning about this stuff.
Yes, and I don't blame him a bit. I mean, it kind of came as a surprise. I knew this. I'd seen enough of this stuff. And, when I had my conversation with Roland Perry, we talked about it. We discussed it. He explained the whole backstory and all of that. And, Malcolm is an eccentric genius. Just like Ben was saying in our conversation, Ben Van Kerkwick was saying, talking about a lot of these guys, if you start digging into their personal lives, you're going to find, look at Nikola Tesla. He was very antisocial, and you could probably dig up and let's say we're going to try to discredit Tesla's work by attacking Tesla, the man.
Right.
And you got to be able to separate the two. And so by the end of the interview, as it's proceeding, I'm getting more and more frustrated because we're not talking about the science. And I've got this great slideshow that I put together, and I keep trying to pull the attention back, but then it would go right back in. Joe would bring something up, and and Malcolm got defensive. And so by the end of it, I'm just like, okay. And then plus in the process, I knew that there was some testing in the pipeline that was going to be basically kept under wraps until the results of the testing. It was not going to be made public until the testing was complete. Some of that stuff kind of came out in the heat of the exchange, which wasn't supposed to come out. And I'm thinking too, at the same time, well, the way this is played out, we didn't get into really a deep dive into the technology at all, hardly. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be crazy if this goes out. Just crazy.
Did he ever come around at any point during the conversation and sort of calm down and actually?
Well, yeah, a couple of times when, Malcolm made some claims about things that happened, and Jamie is over there, blah, 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 pulling it up, and there it comes right up, just exactly as Malcolm said. So there was a couple of points where, it wavered, and, there was a couple of points there where Joe was like, wow, where he was actually able to see some of the stuff, but it just, the way it played out. So after the interview was over, we're packing up to leave, and Joe calls me aside and says, would it be okay with you if we didn't air this right away so I could vet it? And I said, yeah, absolutely, sure. Don't air it until we've had a chance to go through this. And I did mention at that point, like there's going to be, over the next few months or 3 to 6 months, there's going to be some testing going on independently. And why don't we wait and see what the results of those tests are? And so a lot of that testing has been going on over this summer. And so we have some test results in hand, and the test results are coming out pretty unanimous that the technology does what has been claimed for it. It reduces the pollution by an enormous amount for any engine that's based upon fossil fuel based, and this, diesel, regular gasoline, propane, natural gas, kerosene, and we'll get into some of that. And again, I'm still at this point, like several of the physicists now that have witnessed the technology in operation. One of them, George Lush, who did the annealing. He's a contractor with aerospace industry and NASA, very highly credentialed, highly credible individual, third generation in this in the annealing technology, which is, the preparation of the metals. You have to prepare metals. If you're going to launch a rocket ship, you have to make sure that that metal is prepared properly. Right. So like he said, and he kind of captured the response of a number of people that have looked into it, is like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but it works. I've seen it work, and so he's not the only one. And so, like I said, there's been testing going on over the summer. One of the most, in June and July, they built the first industrial scale application of the technology. And they retrofitted a 400 kilowatt generator at a power plant just outside of London.
Oh, wow.
And we're testing it there. And I have the test results,
Is there any speculation or evidence that some of this technology could have been what was used in ancient times to build some of these mega structures, like the pyramids or anything like that?
I think it's very possible. And that was that was kind of because how I initially made those remarks on Rogan's show with Graham there, is because that was the subject that came up in the conversation. And so I kind of dropped that, and it's been crazy ever since. And of course, I put out a few places that I was just kind of in a holding pattern until some of the further tests. Now at this point, some testing has already gone down, right? And there were videos. I'd seen the videos. I talked to well, in fact, I went to a meeting in Arkansas about a year ago. And I met some of the key people that were coming together who saw the commercial opportunities of this. And one of these individuals bankrolled the building of the prototypes and the testing fees and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, didn't you say there was a big car manufacturer somewhere in like Asia?
Well, yeah, there are several car manufacturers that are interested. I mean, nobody has signed on the dotted line yet, but they were waiting to see what the results of the tests were going to be.
Got it.
Okay. Now, a few weeks ago in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was the annual Tesla Tech conference, where all of these people interested in Tesla's technology and interrelated things all come together every year to compare notes and see who's doing what. Malcolm and George Howard went out there. Mike Robertson, who is the CEO of HowTube, went down, and you had 3 or 4 different people independently videoing and documenting the whole thing, where they took I think it was around a 40 kilowatt, about 4,000 watt generator, and they retrofitted it with the technology in front of the audience. And they tested. They had, independent people coming in. One was from, from high level. Los Alamos and.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there with mass spec. One of the scientists that came there, I don't remember who he was affiliated with, but he brought a mass spectrometer. Now, not in the official capacity. Los Alamos was not involved in the official capacity, but people who'd worked on that level.
Okay,
is what I'm saying. So they came in, and you had people bringing in their own gas analyzers to analyze the effluents coming out of the exhaust of the generator, and they had to determine, in other words, so they have the technology hooked up. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, and you start the generator, and then you take a reading. All right. Now, in the tests that are going on currently as we speak, in a laboratory, I can't say which laboratory yet. I will be able to, hopefully in the near future. But they've got 2 generators. They've got a control generator and one that they've hooked up with the technology, so they can run both simultaneously. And again, it's bearing out. It's showing that the technology does what it's supposed to do.
What is it specifically about this technology that makes you think it could have been used thousands of years ago?
Stop stuffing sopping wet bags of ice into your cooler. I've got a brand new fridge on wheels that keeps your food ice cold without ever needing ice. It may look like an ordinary cooler.
Well, first of all, once you begin to understand what the plasma is and plasmoids, the geometry link, I think, for me, was the thing that really brought home that possibility. Because, again, it's complicated. I don't know where to really even start, because part of the problem is, again, my level of understanding of the technology is still, it's still in its infancy. Have me back in 6 months from now, and I will be able to talk more about it, because I have been taking a deep dive, and because of the people I've met recently that are also highly qualified in the scientific world, who are now taking their first look at it, we're kind of all simultaneously kind of like signed up for this course in plasma technology. So we're sharing and comparing notes as we go forward.
But didn't he say that, so Malcolm explained how this technology, he built it on the back of your sacred geometry that you discovered.
Well, he says that I built the foundation and he built the house on top of it, is how he puts it. I think he's giving me more credit than I'm due, but apparently he found something of considerable value in what I had done, because it all comes down to geometry. The control, the plasmoids have an affinity for certain geometries, and they are self-organizing. They will cohere into an organized system. Now, once they go from, let's just go into a little background. If you got 4 states of matter, right? Solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Plasma is the most ubiquitous energy throughout the universe. It's probably 90% of all, well, actually matter. All matter in the universe, right, is mostly plasma. The sun is plasma. Lightning is plasma. Aurora borealis, the northern lights, that's plasma. Okay, so all of these things, these are manifestations of plasma, and plasmas are being used now industrially for a number of purposes, which I'm still learning about. But the question is could ancient cultures have known about it? And I think the answer is yes, I think they could have, but were they? And I would say I think it's very possible that they could have been. Why? Well, just like electricity is such a ubiquitous phenomena, and, 150 years ago, consider what we knew about electricity 150 years ago compared to what we're doing now and its applications, right? And you look at the whole 20th century, is basically taking the basic principles of electricity, electromagnetism, and learning how to develop technologies from that, right? So, I mean, think about all the things that we're doing with electricity right here and right now, right? Okay, so electromagnetic phenomena would be a natural thing for any evolving civilization to utilize, to exploit. Well, in plasma, you've got, going back, solid, you've got strongly bound electrons and neutrons. And if you add energy to the system, like if you add energy in the form of heat to a solid, and every solid will have a different melting point, but if you add energy, the solid will melt. Okay, so now it becomes a liquid. The electrons and the neutrons are still bound, but there's much greater degrees of freedom, and that's why a liquid will flow. And a solid, if we set a solid down, it doesn't change its shape because of how strongly the electrons and the neutrons are bound. Okay, but a liquid, like what's in this can, the liquid is taking the shape of the can. If I have anything else, if I pour it into that cup there, it's going to take the shape of the cup, right? Now, if you add more energy to it, the bonds between the electrons and neutrons weaken even more. And now you're in a gas phase, right? So you now have greater degrees of freedom. However, there's still a connection. They're still bound. Even though it's a weak bonding, they're still bound.
Right.
Add more energy, and now you have a complete disassociation between electron and neutrons. Now are ions, and they're freely flowing. The interesting thing about a plasma is it can be electromagnetically conductive, and it has an affinity for certain geometries. And that's the key. See, and the one form that it's most drawn to is that of a torus. You know, a kind of a donut shape.
So when the electrons and the neutrons and the ions, when they're in the form of plasma, they're completely unbound,
Yes,
not connected at all.
not connected at all.
Can you see them? Well, you can see lightning, right?
Well, yeah, you can see lightning. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
You can see ball lightning. You know,
Right.
controversial, but it has been proven to exist. Ball lightning is plasma. It's a self-cohered, self-organized system of plasma. So the key is, though, with the technology here, is being able to utilize the plasma. And when it becomes self-organized into a coherent system, that's when it's called a plasmoid. See, rather than just a free ocean of electrons and ions without a structure. Because once it becomes cohered, self-organized into a torus, it can now be used as a source of energy. Now, I don't know if I've gotten every detail of this explanation exactly correct, but that's kind of the basic concept.
Got it.
And so what Malcolm learned how to do, number one, he learned how to create a plasma at lower energies than normal by mixing air and water together, where the air had been pre-ionized by being exposed to ultraviolet light, roughly 100 micron wavelength, which is the same wavelength that's of light that's emitted when the plasmoids are created. Now, the plasmoids are being created out of water, not air, but water, by producing bubbles. Bubbles that are large bubbles you can see, but very small micro bubbles that you can't see. They're microscopic bubbles, okay? The microscopic bubbles were a necessity because only the microscopic bubbles are perfectly spherical, symmetrical and spherical. So what happens is, and I can play a video of it here in a minute, what we call the bubbler, and it's the plasmoid generator. And what this does is it takes this pre-ionized air and it mixes it with water and it injects it into the bubbler. And there the bubbler is subjected to alternating vacuum and compression. The vacuum creates the bubbles. The compression causes the collapse of the bubbles. And they're called cavitation bubbles. And there is a history. If anybody listening that wants to learn more, look up cavitation bubbles.
Okay.
Okay, so when the vacuum is applied, the cavitation bubbles, picture a sphere that's rotating that has an axis, right?
Okay.
Now imagine that you take that sphere and you collapse it along that axis so that it becomes this donut shape. And imagine you're in a cross section. It actually will look what it's doing is it's assuming the shape of an infinity symbol, right? And so what do we got there? Yeah, there we go, right there. There we go. Look, and
so this representation would be what all of the little microscopic bubbles are in the water.
Yes, except the difference is what this is showing is a collapse from along one axis, and then you've got this vortex. You see on the far right, you've got this vortex coming down.
Yeah.
What's happening in this system is that the collapse is coming from both the North and the South Pole and meeting at the equatorial plane.
Okay.
So now you can see there you got this vortex that's coming down almost like you see it looks like almost like a tornado hanging down.
Yep.
Okay, now picture, but you've got that coming from both poles.
From the bottom and the top.
Bottom and the top, and they're meeting at the equatorial plane. And what's happening is that the plasmas are accelerating down that vortex to high rates of speed, but in opposite directions. So the northern hemisphere, it's clockwise.
Okay.
In the southern hemisphere, it's counterclockwise, and that's meeting at that 0 point. And this is what is now being referred to as the 0 point energy, because here's where the energy is being harvested. And what I should probably do, let's see here if I can.
Collapsed sphere.
Yeah, so here we're looking at it from above. And if you follow the path here, of this thing. It's spiraling around down towards the center. It's spiraling into this vortex, but the same thing is happening in the opposite direction from the southern hemisphere. And then if you take cross sections of it, like this is a 16-fold division of that torus. And so if you look at one of them, there's your infinity symbol that I was talking about.
Oh, wow.
Which might be a first hint.
What is the hint? It's football season, baby, and you know what time it is. Time to gamble all that hard-earned money on some sports. As a bettor, you demand perfection, and that's where MyBookie delivers. NFL, college football, and a brand new cash-out system give you the options to bet and win all season long. First 2 legs of your parlay already hit. You can cash it out.
Now, the other thing is that he realized that as this spiraling plasma, electrons and ions are spiraling down this vortex, is that you're changing frequencies. So it's vibration. They're changing the frequencies, and the frequencies coincide with the frequencies of the colors of the spectrum. So that's what you got right there. Then the next step was realizing that the elements could be arrayed along this vortex. And you see the vortex is spinning down, and each of those frequencies correlates with one of the elements. Because
explain to me, I'm an idiot. How do the frequencies correlate with the elements?
Well, because every single thing in reality vibrates. Everything vibrates.
Right.
You have colors vibrate, sounds vibrate, everything. This can vibrates, right? Everything vibrates according to certain frequencies, and every element
has a different frequency.
Has a different frequency. Yeah. And so he discovered that those frequencies can be plotted along this spiraling vortex, which is the pathway of the plasmas as they're spinning down towards the 0 point. And the frequency is based upon this particular, the triangle that you see right here.
Okay, we got matter, light, and zero matter.
Mm-hmm. Let's not try to get into that because we're getting pretty esoteric there.
Yes, we are.
Now, it is not necessary because I know of one of the people that I met in Arkansas, his son-in-law is a mechanic. And they sent him the specs and the components. He built the thing in his shop and tested it. I've seen his video.
Really?
Yeah, it took him 5 hours to retrofit an internal combustion engine. And he sends back to his uncle, his father-in-law, he says, well, I don't know how it worked, but I hooked it up and it worked. And he put the gas analyzer there in the exhaust pipe and saw for himself what changed when he turned the technology on and then when he turned it off. So, and I'm at that point where, okay, I've seen enough now, and I've seen it myself work. I have been in the lab and seen it work. I've stood right there while independent engineers and scientists with their equipment were testing. And so I watched myself and have seen it. And I was already convinced because I'd seen probably half a dozen videos, because every time it's been tested, there have been video recordings of it. And I'd seen the videos from the Albuquerque at the Tesla Tech conference. And George Howard, who was a total skeptic, he was there. And he came away, oh, well. So there's a video of him getting down. You've got they're running a generator without the technology, and they had to move it outside because the fumes were so strong, right? Coming out of the exhaust fumes were coming out of the exhaust pipe were so strong. They had to move the thing outside onto the loading dock, right? They turned the technology on, and within about a couple of minutes, instead of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and other hydrocarbons coming out, they've all gone down to just a small percentage. Some of them we've even zeroed out. And what's coming out is like 20% oxygen. Optimum atmospheric levels of oxygen that you would be breathing in a pristine, unpolluted, natural environment. And that's what's coming out of the exhaust.
This is 20% oxygen in here right now, right?
Probably not that much inside here. But if you were out in, as George Lush put it, in a pristine alpine meadow with unpolluted air, and you're breathing that's what's coming out of the exhaust.
Wow.
George got down. George the skeptic got down, and we were joking, still joking. It's on video. It's because all this is being live streamed now. So anybody who wanted to sign up, and there were people all over the world watching this happen real time, okay? And he gets down, and we're joking about how George Howard was huffing the plasmoids.
So I'm literally tracking it. See that? Now look at my fingers. Oh, yes. Whoa, I'm the Jacob Hall, and I've got a problem. So I have this, and I want it to look like this. So I'm gonna use this, the Wallaby. And what I'm having a problem with is because this wall depth is very shallow, and there's styrofoam, and I literally have this tiny cavity as I push this down, and I need to know where to catch it. So dropping the HDMI cable down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah, I mean, the skeptics have been having a field day.
So what else do we
Okay,
got?
so this is the mechanic, the son-in-law that I just told you about. He's just finished retrofitting a generator in his shop. And I watched the video of him saying, yeah, I don't know how it works, but I just hooked it up and turned it on, and it works. So like you can see here, this is the bubbler right here. This is, in this tube is where the plasmas are being generated. And this is where the UV light, they're pre-ionizing the air in this chamber. You can't see, the key of the whole system is the thunderstorm generator.
The thunderstorm generator.
The thunderstorm generator,
Dun,
yes.
dun, dun.
That's what they call it.
So those donut shapes are being created inside that cylinder, that bubbler.
Yes, that's right.
And is there just one toroid? Is that what it's called? Toroid? The donut shape?
Torus.
Yeah. So is there only one of those inside that bubbler?
Oh, no, there's billions of them.
Billions of
Billions
those.
of
Oh,
them.
wow.
Yeah, billions of them. Now, this is a video. I don't know, can we play a video?
Yeah, we can play a video.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if I
Turn
can
the volume down on your computer.
turn the volume down on my computer, is what you said.
You don't have to. Just play it. You're fine.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay. So this is Gary Ling. He's in London, and he's been overseeing the build out of the big industrial. Now this is a couple of years ago where they were still testing like backyard scale of things. So he's got this in his backyard. They've built the thing. They've hooked it up to a Honda generator, and I'm going to fast forward through some of it, but he gives a good explanation of what's going on. Let's see if I can. Okay, so he's pointing to the gas analyzer here.
Okay.
And they're going to hook up, they're going to take the probe from the analyzer, and they're going to put it, the exhaust pipe is down here, and they're going to feed it into the exhaust pipe.
Okay.
I think this is the guy who has built it according to Malcolm's specifications. Yeah, so he's now going to uncover, so you see the generator there. And okay, so I'm going to pause it right here for a second. Okay, so this is the ionizer. So they feed air into the top. It's subjected to UV light of a frequency of about 100 microns. And then that comes down here in this pipe, and then it's mixed with water, and that comes in, and here's the bubblers where the cavitation bubbles are created. And when those billions of cavitation bubbles collapse, they emit a light. They emit frequency of UV light, ultraviolet light, at the same frequency as the pre-ionizer chamber. And it was this pre-ionizer chamber that is the key to being able to generate the plasmas at lower energies than it would normally take to cause that disassociation between electrons and neutrons. Okay, I don't fully understand exactly how it works. Again, get me back on 6 months and I should be able to be a little bit more,
so this it's
explanatory.
UV. That's where the energy is coming from. The UV light.
The UV light, I wouldn't say that's where the energy is coming from, but the UV is emitted when those cavitation bubbles collapse.
Okay.
Now that UV light, perhaps, again, my understanding of this is still in its infancy. Over here, this thing right here is where the water intake, the water is fed in here and it goes down, and that water comes up here into the bubbler. And then the bubbler, captures those plasmoids and feeds them into the thunderstorm generator, which you can't see here. But as we go around, let's see, I'll fast forward here as he's coming around. Here we go. He's pointing out and he's explaining how the bubbler works. And then he's coming around. Yes. So here he's talking. He says, this is the center of the whole system. This is your thunderstorm generator right here.
Okay.
And if people want to kind of get the basic principle of how the thunderstorm generator looks, look up the Rank, R-A-N-Q-U-E, Rank Hilch vortex tube.
The Rank Hilch vortex tube. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe Stephen can.
Yeah, Steve can pull it up.
But actually, I think I've got a slide of it here. So this is the heart of the system here. It's the thunderstorm generator. And what it does is it takes room temperature air and separates it into extremely hot and extremely cold, and then brings them back together. And in that, so you've got a stream of plasma that's really hot and a stream that's really cold. So it's mimicking, in a way, a thunderstorm, which brings together a cold front and a hot front. And in a thunderstorm, now when you bring that together, what does it do? It emits lightning, right? And lightning is plasma. So somehow what he's done is he's come up with a system of mimicking the thunderstorm. And so let's see, let me just go ahead and jump ahead here. I think they're going to, he's explaining the operation of the thunderstorm generator right there. Take a good look at these are actually, there's another sphere inside the sphere. There's two spheres on each end. There's another sphere inside, and then there's a pipe or a tube, and it has another tube going inside it.
Okay.
And so here you can see the gas analyzer has been fed into the exhaust right here. So what they're going to do is they're going to do a series of tests, turning on the technology and turning it off, and then watching what happens to the change in the emissions that are coming out. So there he's hooking it up. They're running the gas analyzer. And let's see here. We don't have the volume, so I'm not sure exactly what part. This is Gary Ling here. This is actually his backyard where they've built this thing, and he's friends with Malcolm and has known him for years. I probably skipped over, but they've got.
So the exhaust coming out of that thing is 20% oxygen.
That could be 19, could be 20. The highest I've seen is 20.9%. So is that the main reason people would want to use this, is to lower carbon emissions and to decrease like pollution and things like that? Or are there any other that would be
benefits of using this technology?
One of the main reasons. Okay, look at here. Let's see what we got happening here. They're zooming in on the analyzer. Let's see. So he's turning let's see. What do we got? Did he just turn the technology on? Oh, he just turned the technology off. So you can see this is carbon monoxide right here, CO. Let me back up just a little bit. Let's see. Let's go in. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So you can see there. Okay, there you are. That's with the technology on.
Carbon emissions is what? Zero.
Let's see. So carbon monoxide is the top reading, and hydrocarbons is, let's see. So this is percent of carbon monoxide. This is the parts per million of hydrocarbons in general.
Got it.
So now turn the technology back off, and then we'll see what happens as soon as he turns the technology
This
off.
guy's a terrible cameraman.
Well, yes. But, yes, that's why we had professionals out at the Tesla Tech. Come on here. Let's just fast forward a little bit here. Okay, so now he's presumably going to turn it off. It's been a couple of months since I've watched this.
Okay, he just turned it off.
And the generator's running, so let's see what's going to happen there now. Okay, so now you can see what happened. He's turning, look here, you can see the carbon monoxide percentage going up, hydrocarbons parts per million. Or no, okay, so he's turned it on, now he's turned it off. I'm sorry. So now he's turned the technology back. I guess I skipped forward a little bit too much. So now he's turned the technology back on. So what we're seeing is that those numbers are going down. You see that?
Okay.
See it?
What's that say? 10.4?
Whoops. Well, he's explaining it as it goes here. Let's see. But let's not spend too much time on that. Let's here's the cross section of the spheres.
So this is a diagram of what's going on inside the thunderstorm generator.
Yes.
Inside of those spheres.
Exhaust gases are introduced at an angle. First expand anti-clockwise and then contract clockwise as they pass through the cavity between two spheres. This creates opposing tornadoes within both the outer and inner spheres. So again, this is available. People can download this and go through it themselves, and several people are now. This is what I was talking about. This is your Rank-Hilch vortex tube.
Okay.
Using compressed air supply with a room temperature of plus 23 degrees centigrade. Let's see, what does that convert to Fahrenheit? 73. Thanks.
Thanks,
okay.
Steve.
So right, almost room temperature. All right, so check this out now. Okay, so introduced at almost room temperature. You said 73.
Yep.
Okay, so what is happening, there's no moving parts in this thing. It simply is based upon vortex geometry, these whirling vortexes. So what comes in, this is the chamber where pressurized gas is injected tangentially into a swirl chamber. So this is the swirl chamber in a vortex tube. In the thunderstorm generator, the spheres are the swirl chambers.
So so the first part it gets introduced to is the sphere. And that begins the swirl effect of the gas, of the air?
Yes.
Okay.
Argon gas.
Argon gas. And then it begins to travel through the tubes. And there's two tubes. There's an inner tube and an outer tube. The inner tube looks like cold air and the outer tube looks like hot air.
And look at the cold air is coming out at minus 15
Celsius.
with the minimum recorded temperature of minus 50. Steve, what does minus 50 convert to Fahrenheit?
50 is negative 58 Fahrenheit.
So negative 58 degrees below zero Fahrenheit is coming out one end. At the other end, the maximum recorded temperature in the vortex tube is 200 degrees centigrade.
Which is 392 Fahrenheit.
So we go from a high of 392 to a low of, what did you say, 50-some below zero. So
58.
So we're talking well over 400 degrees separation in this tube with no moving parts.
Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about your blood flow? Redwood uses just a few simple, completely natural ingredients to increase.
And in reading up on it, one of the things that comes up on is that scientists are saying, well, we don't know exactly how it works, but it works, and it's being used throughout the industry. You know, where it's used in nuclear reactors, it's used in air conditioning technology. It's got multiple applications, these vortex tubes, and nobody really knows how it works.
Really?
Yeah.
These same vortex tubes are used in air conditioning units?
Yes. Well, the air conditioning industry uses them. And now I want you to look down on what's happening on this end.
Right.
There's a cone. There's a cone right here. And it's this cone that is pushing this high temperature. You see as it's coming, see what's happening is it's traveling down this tube. It's getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
Got it.
And it's ejected due to the conical nozzle at the end of the tube, only the outer shell of the compressed gas is allowed to escape at that end.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The remainder is forced to return in an inner vortex, and you can see this. So here it's returning, it's coming back, and it's cooling as it's coming back up the tube, of reduced diameter within the outer vortex, and it is now being emitted at the other end.
Okay.
Now, I don't,
That's pretty easy to understand.
yeah, but how it works, I don't know.
Yeah, where does the hot air go and where does the cold air go?
Well, it just goes out.
That's the exhaust?
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, I guess, say in air conditioning applications, I guess you would capture that cold air.
All
Or
right.
cooling nuclear reactors. There's some adaptation of this type of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I haven't researched this in depth, so give me another few months.
Okay.
So yeah, here's another
This
version of it.
this is a great diagram. Okay.
Yeah, compressed air normally 80 to 100 psig, which is 6.9 bar, is ejected tangentially. So here comes your air supply, and
Up to 1 million RPMs.
yeah,
The air stream revolves towards the hot end where some escapes through the control valve. The remaining air, still spinning, is forced back through the center of this outer vortex. The inner stream gives off kinetic energy in the...
sorry about that. But again, you can find this online.
Okay.
And anybody who's watching this, and I would encourage people to do your own research. And really what we're trying to do is sort of get a group of people who are students of this, who were exploring it, testing it, comparing notes, and so on.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff we'll skip over here. This is
Yeah, so what is that big diagram above that? These are all the elements? This is where it gets interesting.
this is the plasmoid unification model.
Okay.
And again, this is basically, this integrates all sounds, all colors, all elements. All of the sacred numbers are in this.
Right.
Astronomical numbers. You look up here on the right, the sun, 864,000. And people can go through this and work this. Now, I've had some posters, full big size posters printed up of this that I would sell to anybody who wanted one. If somebody wants to really get in and study this, it really looks cool up on the wall. But there's so much information in here. If anybody wants to dive into this,
What's the diagram on the bottom corner? There's the sun, the earth, and the moon.
down here,
Yeah.
showing the numbers. The sun is 864,000 miles, and he's showing how those numbers that measure the sun, the earth, and the moon correlate to these various frequencies.
Oh, wow.
So in one of our previous discussion with Ben, we did touch upon some of this,
Right.
So here's your basic diagram.
Okay.
Air inlet, your pre-ionization chamber, which is fed now into the plasmoid generator.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's fed into the thunderstorm generator, which then is fed through the carburetor into the generator. It captures the exhaust output from the manifold and feeds it right back into the thunderstorm generator.
So does this replace the need for fossil fuels?
You use fossil fuels only to get the initial temperatures to create the plasmas, and then once you've done that, it's self-perpetuating. But it requires something to get the energy up. So the models now use fossil fuel only in the initial, but once the requisite temperatures have been reached and you've generated the plasmas, now it is, and I suppose, at some point, I don't know, it would run down, but it can run. I mean, as long as the equipment holds up. So one of the things that's now being done, like with George Lush, is they're now going to go into really high performance metals. So I think the lifespan of this process is going to be dependent upon the lifespan of the materials out of which the thing is made, particularly the thunderstorm.
Okay.
So in the interview, which I can play, I mean, I have it here. We can play the interview with him where he's talking about now, he's got the industry contact, so they're going to be going into like high performance materials, the kind of materials you would be using in the aerospace industry to build a new generation of thunderstorm generators.
Wow.
So the pre-ionization chamber, the function of the chamber is to pre-ionize incoming air to the engine. Air is drawn into the chamber by a vacuum emanating from the engine that is to be pre-treated before it enters the plasmoid generator. That's the bubbler. It is pre-treated by exposing the air to ultraviolet light at a specific frequency of 100 microns. This frequency is determined by the frequency of ultraviolet light emitted from collapsing bubbles within our plasmoid generator. The bubbles collapse violently as they are exposed sequentially to both vacuum and pressure pulses resulting from the movement of pistons within the combustion chamber of the engine or the generator.
Okay.
This has the effect of making the gases, this pre-ionization has the effect of making the gases more reactive by ionizing a small percentage of each gas present in the air, whether nitrogen, oxygen, or argon.
And then this all pumps back into the carburetor of the motor of the engine.
Yeah. Yes.
And then it somehow keeps cycling through the engine.
It keeps cycling and recycling. So everything that's coming out in terms of okay, so oxygen is coming out because that's basically, it's air, pure air coming out, because all the other stuff, the hydrocarbons, the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, that's all being recaptured and broken down in a sort of a low energy atomic reaction is what it's called. They're calling it.
Okay, got it.
And so here, here's the diagram, the schematics of the pre-ionization chamber. And so again, all of this is open source, so people can go on and, you can go ahead and bluster all you want about hoaxes and frauds and all of that. But while you're doing that, or while these people are doing that, others are actually now building these, using these. I know at least one guy in Australia, a young fella, very smart young fella, who is building his own machine by using the schematics, and we should soon be hearing from him what his results are. Here's again the cross section, the schematic of the bubbler, and all the parts are that you would need to build one. All right, here's all the part numbers that you need to put the thing together, and the team that's come together around this is totally open to helping, backyard mechanics and home experimenters who want to try to build the small scale of this technology.
Okay, yeah. So it's been proven. It's been done. People have some of these backyard engineers have done it. They've obviously
the first one we saw.
We just watched that.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So, what are the ultimate implications of this technology?
It will massively increase the efficiency of any engine or generator.
And
anything that runs on fossil fuels will be the efficiency will be massively, and this is one of the things that's now been demonstrated repeatedly. It massively increases the efficiency. And like George Lush says, once we have cars that are retrofitted with this, the way he put it, he said, like, instead of cars, driving down the city streets, exhausting pollution, they'll be like mobile trees, because that's what trees do. They take in the carbon dioxide and they put out oxygen. And then that oxygen, like if in a nice pristine forest where you've got healthy forests with trees, it's 19, 20, 21% oxygen. That's,
Combustion engines are only 33% efficient, I think.
I think that's, but like maximum, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of this is available for people to study. So
wow.
I would say, good, be skeptical, but be open-minded and do your homework, and decide for yourself. And here, again, you can see the swirling. It's just like, it's very much the Hilch vortex tube, except in the Hilch vortex tube, the cold air is in a confined stream within the hot air, right?
Correct.
Okay, in the thunderstorm generator, you actually have a pipe, a tube, inside another tube.
Okay.
And this is your swirl chamber right here.
Now, what are these depictions that Malcolm was showing on the descriptive series he did on your website, where he was basically showing this giant sort of like pine cone shaped thing. It was metal, and it was like it looked like a giant metal pine cone.
Oh, I think that was one of the turbines.
It was huge. It looked huge, at least in the video.
Was it this thing here?
Yes, that thing up there.
Yeah.
What's that called?
The Vajra implosive turbine.
The Vajra implosive turbine.
The Vajra is...
What the hell is that?
I was afraid you were going to ask me.
This episode is brought to you by Blue Chew. Let's talk about sex. Fellas, do you remember the days when you were always ready to go? Now you can increase your performance and get that extra confidence boost in bed. Or part
Meet your next pillow. Why do we make our pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
of the greater Proto-Indo-European mythology. Okay, there's a picture of Indra riding on a elephant with two holding his or her arms out. Holding, is that two of those Vajras? They look like the Vajras.
Yeah, Steve, look up Vajra, V-A-J-R-A. And so Zeus also wielded. There we
Whoa, what are these?
The Vajra. Or you might say an ancient Hindu thunderstorm generator.
The Vajra Thunderbolt is a legendary and ritualistic weapon symbolizing the properties of a diamond and a thunderbolt. The Vajra is a type of club with a ribbed spherical head. The ribs may meet in a ball-shaped top, or they may be separate and end in sharp points with which to stab. The Vajra is a weapon of Indra, the Vedic king of the Devas and heaven. It is symbolic. It is used symbolically by the dharmic traditions of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, often to represent firmness of spirit and spiritual power. Okay. It's a weapon.
So now,
it's a thunderbolt weapon.
Well, they call it a weapon, yes. But now, and note again that Indra is the god of lightning and thunderstorms. That might be a clue right there. The Vajra. Now look at the Vajra. It says here.
So did Malcolm call this thing the Vajra to
commemorate?
To commemorate.
So a ribbed spherical head.
A ribbed spherical head.
The ribs may meet in a ball-shaped top.
Mm-hmm.
Picture the thunderstorm generator you just saw with the ball-shaped top.
Mm-hmm. When was this stuff written? When
the Vedas are way old.
Like how old?
Some of the oldest writings, 5,000 years old, probably.
5,000 years old.
Yeah.
Symbol of nature, symbol for nature of reality, or sunyata, indicating the endless creativity, potency, and skillful activity. The Vajra and bell are used in many rites by the Lama or any Vajranaya practitioner of sadhana. The Vajra is a male polysemic symbol that represents many things for the Tantrika. The Vajra is representative. Okay. So this is an ancient tool.
Mm-hmm. I like that better than a weapon, an ancient tool.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a source of power.
Right.
For Indra.
Right.
As well as Zeus, because Zeus's thunderbolt was a variation of the Vajra. It's also found throughout the Tibetan gods. So why don't we continue on?
Yeah.
Okay, so here, this is a diesel retrofit.
Mm-hmm.
And here you can, now, at this point, you're going to be recognizing the components.
Right.
There's your water intake. There's your pre-ionization chamber. There's your plasmoid generator, and there's your thunderstorm generator. And a little closer up here, there's two versions, two variations. So they're still experimenting with the optimum shape and geometry of the thunderstorm generators. But interestingly, I called attention when people see the interview coming up with the one we did yesterday with Ben.
Yep.
He brings up showing those concentric circles.
Yes.
And I called attention to that.
Measuring the vases.
Measuring the vases, yes. And you saw they were 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yep.
Those are the optimum dimensions for the concentric spheres of the thunderstorm generator. So this one is 4. The next one inside is 3. And here we're getting up here now to the larger scale applications. Here you can see this is the thunderstorm generator with 1 sphere. And
Holy shit, that's massive.
yeah. So you've got the sphere here at the end, and you've got, here's the inner tube, the smaller tube that's going up the middle of the outer tube. So this is operating again like the vortex generator. So they've got your engine analyzers here, your electronic control panel. There's your exhaust analyzer, so it's printing out what the results are. So this is a retrofit, as it says, to a Caterpillar generator. And this is showing, you know, so you got a 24-inch stainless steel sphere here, and inside that is an 18-inch sphere. So there's your bubbler.
And this thing works.
Oh yeah, this is one of the tests right here. And you can see all the analysts, this has all been videoed. It's had independent witnesses monitoring this. I mean, this was this generator was provided by Caterpillar, the company. You've heard of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened here?
Well,
0 point black hole.
So right here, what he's calling the event horizon is where the plasmas are meeting and accumulating. And what happens is they start, each of the plasmas has like almost like a mini black hole at its center with this very powerful implosive force, right? Now, if you assemble a bunch of them together, what happens is those implosive 0 points accumulate and act as a single organized system. So the inner pipe, if you look at this inner pipe that's going in here, they ran it up. I believe, if I remember right, what they did was this one had 3 spheres and 3 pipes, but the intensity was so great they had to take the middle one out, because what was happening is the plasmas are embedding themselves into the crystalline metal of the pipes. And then somehow these 0 points are self-cohering and creating this implosive force. Now I'm very, you know, I'm kind of grasping here at this. I've seen this on the videos, had it explained to me, but I can't say that I fully understand what's going on here, other than the fact that you have these billions of plasmoids forming this coherent implosive force. And then what happens is that the pipe, this was the inner pipe. This pipe here is this one. So, and that right here is where that implosion occurred.
Okay. So we're looking at a picture of this inner pipe, and it's broken in half.
Well, yes, and it's busted inward.
Inward, right.
Inward. It's an implosive force, not an explosive.
Whoa.
So take a good look at this geometry here. Now remember the cone, how the cone separates the flows. Remember I pointed out the cone to you in the vortex tube?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so this is basically doing the same thing. So this is one scheme for, right here you can see the carbon dioxide. This shows the movement, positive generation. And notice here, 4, 3, and 2. These are the ratios.
Inches.
Yes, in this case, inches.
Okay. So the outer layer of the CO2, the chamber is 4 inches wide.
Yep.
And the inner chamber with, what's going through the inner chamber?
If you're currently paying for a subscription to a doorbell camera, stop now. This revolutionary, affordable, subscription-free mini security camera is disrupting the video surveillance industry in the US. This compact magnetic camera can be easily attached to any surface, making the installation as simple as sticking the camera anywhere you want. Whether you're a qualified electrician or a housewife with no prior knowledge of electrical items, setting up Camtrix is a breeze. This groundbreaking invention was developed by 2 former engineers who worked for a leading home security company. Frustrated with the outrageous costs imposed by security companies for...
Is that cold water?
Argon gas.
Argon gas. Okay, that's 2 inches wide.
And then, let's see, plus water in gas phase. So water vapor is going in the 2-inch one.
In the 2-inch one.
And it's coming out this end. It's a minus.
Into the engine. That's where it goes into the engine.
Yes. I'm not going to try to explain all of this.
That looks like some bicycle rims with that pine cone Vajra on the inside.
It is bicycle rims.
And it looks like there's some sort of like purple aurora around that pine cone Vajra.
Here?
Yeah. Am I seeing shit? Or does it look like there's some sort of like purple like light around it?
Yeah, I think you're hallucinating.
Okay.
This is actually looking down one of those tubes that imploded. And it's interesting that it's trying to create a hexagonal shape.
Now, why did they implode?
Because the accumulated plasmoids embedded in the metal had this coherent 0 point. When I come back, I'll have a better explanation of what's going on there.
Okay.
But see, here's the thing. All of this, as this proceeds and the experiments are going on and different people are trying things, there's going to be an ongoing